Assalamualaikum and good day everybody. Welcome to EPPK 6014 Introduction to Entrepreneurship. As part of a bigger subject which is theory and practice of entrepreneurship, this subject and this subtopic will introduce you to the concepts and theories involved in entrepreneurship. So for today, we will discuss the following items. First, introduction to entrepreneurship, the concept of entrepreneurship, and the questions involved in entrepreneurship as a topic. Why you should become an entrepreneur, why people become entrepreneurs, and who are entrepreneurs, the process, and also the role of the government in shaping entrepreneurship in a nation. According to the GEM or the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, entrepreneurship activities in Malaysia is increasing. So how do you know entrepreneurship in a certain country is increasing or decreasing? There's an indication called total early stage entrepreneurial activity. The researchers, they look into the amount of businesses being registered and the projects that have been registered. So as you can see here, this is a 2020 data. We can see a very large jump from 2016 to 2017. I would like to see a more current version of this data, but this is the most current that we got so far. But as you can see here, it is increasing. We could see a bit of decrease from 2006 to 2009, but it is increasing nevertheless. For the entrepreneurship environment globally, I'm taking some parts of the globe just to have a comparison of how entrepreneurship looks like around the world. Interestingly, as you can see here, lesser developed nations seems to be more entrepreneurial than more developed nations. So there are a few explanations for this, but first let's look into the data. Japan is one of the most developed countries in the world. In comparison to Thailand, Thailand is less developed, but the TEA of Thailand is much higher than Japan. Okay. Let's see Middle East and Africa. Angola is one of the poorest countries in the world, not just in Africa. But the total early stage entrepreneurial activity is very high, in fact, the highest among all these countries. In comparison to more developed nations of Middle East, for example, UAE. Okay. So, you can relate this with unemployment. You start a business because you aren't able to be employed. More developed countries are more likely to offer job opportunities. Okay, that is one explanation. But then again, you can see Europe and North America here. Canada is one of the most developed countries in the world. Yet, the TEA is the highest among these nations. Okay. So, there it goes, another explanation. A higher developed nation, they have the capital to build entrepreneurs. So, it can be in the form of facilities for entrepreneurship, financing, the technological environment. So, as you can see here around the world, there are many reasons why people become entrepreneurs. Okay, And if you can see these two main reasons, sometimes people are pushed to become entrepreneurs, sometimes people are pulled to become entrepreneurs. Let's look into the factors influencing the increase of interest in entrepreneurship around the world. First is media accounts of success. At the age of social media, and then at the age of our fascination with entrepreneurs, we can see movies like Steve Jobs movies, and also you have multiple my success stories on social media because people like to see stories of making something big from nothing. Okay, you can see this from the story of Jack Ma and also Steve Jobs. Another factor is a change in global basic values. As a society, we are heading towards independence. We increasingly believe that we can make our own fate. This goes highly linked with globalization era. It's easy to see what people are doing, other people are doing, and it's easy to copy, and it's easy to innovate, which is highly related to the emerging of Internet of Things. It's so easy to create. And then there's the role of education system. University-based technology transfer will mean that there is more innovation that can be produced in the higher education level. So when students, they create their projects, theses and so on for their research, if the project is viable enough, it can be commercialized through technology transfer office. So technology is transferred from the labs to their startup firms. So universities in the US, in Europe, China and Taiwan, for example, they are very active in creating innovation to be commercialized. So their entrepreneurial system is inclusive of universities and schools. There's also incubators and science parks. So this is places where scientists can create, they can do research, it's highly specialized, and countries like China and Taiwan, they are champions in incubators and science parks. So they can create technological products that can be sold anywhere. There's also the increase of entrepreneurial recognition or entrepreneurial thinking. The interest in entrepreneurship, you can see them in media and education. For instance, books. Amazon.com lists over 30,000 plus books dealing with entrepreneurship. 60,000 plus are focused on small business. In education, in terms of college courses, back in the 1980s, there were not many entrepreneurship courses offered across all colleges in the US. And then we can go back to how people look into entrepreneurship years back. Yeah, when we see entrepreneurs, when we see businessmen, we think that working in a multinational company is so much better. So these people cannot get a job in good firms, in good companies. They have to start their business. So the image of entrepreneurship has changed. But today, there are more than 2,000 colleges and universities in the US. They offer at least one course of entrepreneurship. And in Malaysia, every university in Malaysia has at least one entrepreneurship course. And even the government has already developed a ministry called Ministry of Entrepreneur Development 2.0. So the government is increasingly aware of how important entrepreneurship is for the country. There's also this trend of entrepreneurs as cultural heroes. So because entrepreneurs, they defy the norm. Sometimes they skip school, sometimes they drop out of university, they start a business and they become successful. Younger children and teenagers, for example, they see this as cultural heroes. And we can see this in cases of social entrepreneurship, for example. They try to make positive changes in their community. There's also a high regard for high technology entrepreneurs. Elon Musk, the people involved in social media, for example. We talk so much about entrepreneurship, but what is entrepreneurship? For this, let's look into the definition of entrepreneurship. It stems from a French word meaning to undertake or to take in one's own hands, which is almost true because an entrepreneur means that you are the business owner, you are the manager, you are the marketer. An entrepreneur will have many hats, will wear many hats at one time. And entrepreneurship as a term was first used during the Industrial Revolution because it creates employment. It is described as a phenomenon where the individual who formulated a business idea or a venture idea developed it, assembled resources, and created a new business venture. So there's thinking here, doing, and also assuming the risk, all for an anticipated return. There are several definitions of entrepreneurship, and especially the field of entrepreneurship, scholars and researchers in entrepreneurship, they are somewhat obsessed with how the word entrepreneur is being defined. But there are several scholarly definitions. Let's look into the first definition. Someone who exercises business judgment in the face of uncertainty. Okay. Decision making in a risky environment. Okay. The definition, marshals all resources to produce and market product that answers a market deficiency. Okay. Using resources to fill a gap in the market. Okay. Entrepreneurs are also leaders. They contribute to the process of creative destruction. Okay. Also, they perceive profit opportunities. So they initiate action to fill currently unsatisfied needs or to improve in efficiencies. Okay. Entrepreneur is an individual with unusually low level of uncertainty aversion. Yes, because of the risk involved in entrepreneurship. But one of the most widely used definition is an entrepreneur is a person who discovers, evaluates, and exploits opportunities to introduce new goods and services. They also introduce ways of organizing, markets, processes, and raw materials through organizing efforts that previously had not been existed. So, based on this definition, you can see there's a gap in the market, a huge role of risk, and also resource management. So, does this mean a manager is an entrepreneur? Is a politician an entrepreneur? A criminal, is he an entrepreneur? So, it goes back to the definition that you choose. Okay. For the context of this subject, entrepreneurs are people who create ventures. So, creating venture will involve resource management, filling a gap in the market while assuming the risk involved. So as you can see here, entrepreneurship involves a process of bringing something new to the marketplace, which includes a chain of events and activities that take place over a period of time and embedded within a risky environment. Okay. Entrepreneurship also can be defined as a process. It is brought by individuals of identifying new opportunities and converting them into marketable products or services. As a field, entrepreneurship seeks to understand how opportunities to create something new arise, how they are discovered or how they are created by specific individuals. Why do some individuals are able to create opportunities or to exploit opportunities? Then they use various means to exploit or develop them, then producing a wide range of effects. Effects here can mean a disruption of normalcy. Entrepreneurs create new things, they introduce new things. So they disrupt stability. This does not necessarily mean a bad thing, but it disrupts stability. There are a few perspectives here. Entrepreneurship in micro perspective focuses on the behavior and thoughts of individual. Micro perspective focuses primarily on environmental factors, how they influence individual entrepreneurs. And these aspects are both key in understanding the entrepreneurial process. There are a few key elements of entrepreneurship as we have discussed here. The entrepreneur is important, but to build a venture, the environment has to be encouraging enough for the entrepreneur to manage resources, to capture opportunity, and to organize their resources. So entrepreneurship is condition-based. There are 5 generally agreed conditions that are necessary for entrepreneurship to occur. First, the individual, the opportunity, resources, business organisation, and a favourable environment. So a favourable environment here can be favourable government, can be the people around the entrepreneur who are encouraging of the venture and so on. Okay. For this class, we will look into entrepreneurship as a process. It's a process of first identifying an opportunity, exploiting or developing this opportunity, and then running a new business successfully. Why do individuals become entrepreneurs? We look into the entrepreneurial motivation. 2 basic motivations here, internal and external. Internal is something embedded, something ingrained within the entrepreneur. Most entrepreneurs have a high need of achievement that cannot be obtained through employed salary. It also involves risk-taking and tolerance for ambiguity. Being tolerant of something that you are not fully informed of. That is entrepreneurship. Also a locus of control, being able to be in control of many things, self-efficacy, passion, and also independence. There's also some other factors as well. Sometimes people become entrepreneurs because there's lack of employment opportunities, maybe lack of qualification. So this person dropped out of university, so this person couldn't get a job. An alternative to that is to build a business. There's also access to opportunity. Some environments have more opportunities than others. This explains why there are more entrepreneurs in the US than in poorer countries, for example. There are three primary reasons that people become entrepreneurs, and explain why they start their own firms. First is the desire to be their own boss, because usually entrepreneurs, coming back to the internal factors of becoming an entrepreneur, they have high locus of control, so they desire to be their own boss. They also have the desire to pursue their own ideas. This might not be achievable if you are working under employment. And lastly is financial rewards, because entrepreneurship is strongly related with making money, achieving profit, and so on. In terms of entrepreneurial motivation, there are also rewards of becoming an entrepreneur. First is profit, which is financial gain proportionate to personal achievement. This is highly related with the traits of an entrepreneur, whereby having a high need of achievement. Next is personal satisfaction. Being an entrepreneur, if done the right way, the entrepreneur will enjoy a satisfying way of life, stemming from the idea that an entrepreneur is able to make their own decision. Next is independence, which is highly related to making your own decision. Entrepreneurs have the power to make their own business decisions. Next is personal fulfillment, because one of the rewards of entrepreneurship is to be able to contribute to the community by filling a gap in the market, by helping people in their own community, and so on. Lastly is freedom, which is to escape from an undesirable situation. So this is highly related with push factors of becoming an entrepreneur. But some motivations are not so motivational. For example, there's reluctant entrepreneurs, who are people who become entrepreneurs as a result of some severe hardship. So you can see this in the cases of immigrants who become entrepreneurs because they are unable to get a job in a foreign country. Refugee, a person who becomes entrepreneur to escape an undesirable situation. Who are entrepreneurs? The image of entrepreneurs that we see around us relates entrepreneurship with profit, wealth, success at early age. But who are entrepreneurs really? There are two basic schools of thoughts that shape the profile of an entrepreneur. First is economists. They consider the entrepreneur as an agent who specialises in certain roles. Then behaviorists. They concentrate on the creative and intuitive character. From the economist point of view, entrepreneurship is considered as a function. Because the status of an entrepreneur can be analysed in terms of labour division. It's quite mechanistic, so this explains this function based on certain roles. An entrepreneur is a risk bearer. They also an arbitrager, who is a person who enjoys profit from market inefficiencies. Market inefficiencies meaning there's a gap that can be filled. And an efficient market meaning there's gaps that is potentially to be filled by ventures. For example, high medical costs in many countries bear opportunities for cheap, sometimes illegal medicine. An entrepreneur is also an innovator. For example, if the entrepreneur is concerned with global warming, they can create a company for green product. An entrepreneur is also a coordinator for scarce resources. So that is the economist's point of view. A behaviorist point of view is more interested with the psychological characteristics and personality of the entrepreneur. There are a lot of characteristics and some of them vary across different research, but there are 3 of the endless list of entrepreneurial traits that have high level of validity. First is the need for achievement, internal locus of control, and propensity for risk taking. Entrepreneurs have high need for achievement because sometimes there are some achievements that employment cannot give to the entrepreneur. Internal locus of control, meaning that they want to be able to make their own decisions. This is unattainable if the person is working under employment. But in return for all that, the entrepreneur has to be able to take risk. There are some varieties of entrepreneurship. First is the founder or pure entrepreneurs. This is a person who brings a new firm into existence. There's also administrative entrepreneur, which is an entrepreneur who oversees the operations of an ongoing business. A franchisee is also an entrepreneur because they see an opportunity and they take advantage of it. A franchisee is an entrepreneur whose power is limited by the contractual relationship with a franchising organization. But based on the opportunity and the risk involved, a franchisee is also considered an entrepreneur. There's also entrepreneurial team, where 2 or more people work together as entrepreneurs on one project or endeavor. Another variety is artisan entrepreneur. This is a person who has technical skills but have little business knowledge. They start a business. So you can see this, maybe a lot of gym owners, they are artisan entrepreneurs. Some painters, they are artisan entrepreneurs. So some characteristics here, they take a paternalistic approach in their business. Usually they are reluctant to delegate. Coming back to the paternalistic approach, they use few sources of capital and have traditional marketing strategy. They are not likely to innovate, but they focus on personal sales effort and have a short planning horizon. Most likely that artisan entrepreneur, they do not have long-term view of their business. So their business is basically how they fend for themselves. There's also opportunistic entrepreneur, a person with both sophisticated managerial skills and technical knowledge who starts a business. These are the characteristics of an opportunistic entrepreneur. First is broad-based education. Scientific approach to problems, they are willing to delegate, they have a broad view of strategy, and they have diversified marketing approach and longer planning horizon. They also have sophisticated accounting and financial control. So they have very big visions for their ventures. Women entrepreneurs is also a variety of entrepreneurship. So there are more women than men who are starting new businesses. There are a lot of reasons for this. First, some women, they start leaving their jobs to raise family, and coming back to the work environment may not be so suitable for them, so they start a business. And 40% of all businesses right now are majority female owned. And there's also a movement of women into non-traditional industries, technology, industrial environment, and so on. But women entrepreneurs, they are facing the following problems: discrimination and difficulties stemming from their gender, lack of access to credit, lack of networking connections, and balancing work and family life. Entrepreneurship can be seen as a career because it is a way for us to survive in the world. But there are four types of risks to consider before embracing a career in entrepreneurship. Financial risk, career risk, social risk, and health risk. Financial risk. What do you have to lose, or how much do you need to invest? Career risk. What happens if you leave your current job? Social risk. Will you lose or gain more friends once you have decided to become an entrepreneur? And also health risk. Being an entrepreneur is stressful. It takes a lot of your time, and it is also a risk to consider before embracing a career in entrepreneurship. In terms of finances, financial risk is a risk involved for entrepreneurship as a career because there's a large amount of money that has to be invested. Some entrepreneurs, they borrow funds from bankers, venture capitalists, or partners. So these alternatives can reduce financial risk, and legal structures can help to minimize financial risk. But these are risks nevertheless. How about career? There's questions about re-employment after an eventual failure. Not all entrepreneurship opportunities that have been exploited will become a success. So what will happen after that failure? So this re-employment must be considered, and this risk is particularly acute for well-paid specialists and people close to retirement because there's less opportunity for them. But risk can be minimized by launching a business on a part-time basis. Social risk. Starting a business venture will require a lot of the entrepreneur's energy and time. So there's a risk of having to sacrifice time with family. So this is to reduce conflict potential if you want to decide to set up a venture. Another risk is related to the negative image of failed entrepreneurs. For example, kiasu attitude or afraid to lose. This has to be a risk that has to be assumed by the entrepreneur as well. Health risk. There's evidence that entrepreneurs experience higher job stress and also psychosomatic health problems because, again, they do not usually, if the business is already started and in the early stages, it's more stressful because entrepreneurs will lose sleep, it's more stressful, and usually the venture will not be making as much. So it is considered a health risk. So would-be entrepreneurs should make sure that their health can cope with the demands and challenges of starting and running a business. So there's a research on health risk for entrepreneurs being done in Germany. So these are the diseases or illnesses experienced by entrepreneurs. So some diseases are more somatic, some of them are more mental. Let's look into somatic diseases: hypertension, stomach issues, diabetes, back pain, shoulder pain. We can already imagine this. Why? Because it's stressful, you sit all the time and sometimes you forgot to eat. There's also mental disorder, anxiety, afraid of failure, and also maybe substance abuse because you will need that extra energy to keep your business going. So it is considered health risk to start an entrepreneurship venture. Let's take a look into the entrepreneurial process. We specifically refer to the venture creation process, the process of creating a business. First, not all individuals have the potential to launch a business venture. And those that do, not all will attempt a founding. Some of the ideas just will end in the ideation stage. And those who attempt, not all will be successful in founding. So that is how challenging the entrepreneurship process is. So you can see here, it is a combination of many factors. Okay, let's take a look into the process itself. It starts with recognizing opportunities. So this is where the thinking comes into the picture. It is influenced by the environment, the community where the entrepreneur is in, the political environment. Is it favorable for business startup? The economic environment, is the economic environment of that country is favorable to start a venture? How about the financial facilities? Is it easy to get loans? And there's also social-cultural factors. How accepting people are about entrepreneurship in relation to the individual's alertness, knowledge, social network, and aspiration. So this is more internal. During the evaluation of opportunity stage, this is where the entrepreneur will have the intention to start a business. So concentrate steps to evaluate and shape the opportunity through market research, gathering of resources, and developing a business plan. Next is to exploit opportunities. Two decisions here to found a business. If the triggers are bigger than the barriers, then there's the decision to start a business and to register a business. Maybe abandoned and left in the ideation stage if the triggers are smaller than the barriers. So the triggers, the factors that positively influence business creation, has to be bigger than the barriers. Let's look into entrepreneurial cognition, the thinking of entrepreneurs. So this is the ability to sense, act and mobilize under certain conditions. In Malaysian context, we can call it otak business, business-minded maybe. So this is effectuate. Entrepreneurs will identify the next best step by assessing the resources available in order to achieve goals. At the same time, continuously balancing goals with resources. So, entrepreneurs in particular situations may think differently when faced with different tasks or decision environment. So, based on the nature of this environment, entrepreneurs may need to sometimes be effectuate, to be more alert, to be cognitively adaptable and learn from failure. This is also a causal process. It starts with a desired outcome, and entrepreneurs will focus on the means to generate that outcome. So, as an effectuation process, it starts with what an individual has in terms of who they are, what they know, and who they know, and they select among possible outcomes. Still, this is in the idea stage. So, the entrepreneurial mindset will involve the ability to rapidly sense, act, and mobilize even under uncertain conditions. There's also cognitive adaptability. So this describes the extent to which the entrepreneurs are dynamic, flexible, self-regulating, and engaged in the process of generating multiple decision frameworks. Focus on sensing and processing changes in their environments and then acting on them. So there's a lot of decisions that has to be made as an entrepreneur, and sometimes these decisions has to be made in very, very short period of time. So strength in mental ability and entrepreneurial connection is very important. So this will also reflect in an entrepreneur's metacognitive awareness. So in simpler words, intelligence. So this does not mean high IQ, this does not mean having straight A's, just awareness of the environment and being able to adapt. How to achieve cognitive adaptability? First, through comprehension questions. So this will assist in understanding of the nature of the environment before addressing an entrepreneurial challenge, because the environment is always bigger than the task. Next is connection task. This stimulates thinking about the current situation in terms of similarities and differences with situations previously faced and solved. Strategic task. This is when the entrepreneur stimulates thoughts about which strategies are appropriate for solving the problem and why. Then pursuing the opportunity. So entrepreneurs will also ask the question how and then strategize. Next is reflection task. This stimulates thinking about their understanding and feelings as they progress through the entrepreneurial process. So a lot of thinking is involved, a lot of decision making is involved. And entrepreneurs who are able to increase cognitive adaptability, they have an improved ability to adapt to new situations. They are able to be creative. They are also be able to communicate their reasoning, to communicate one's reasoning behind a particular response. So high adaptability, high responsibility, some kind of special intelligence is needed for an entrepreneur to be successful. So this is interesting. Entrepreneurship as a national policy. In recent years, we have seen entrepreneurship is being embedded into government policies, as a national policies, local and in the international level. This is for a few good reasons. Because entrepreneurship creates jobs. How? Through venture creation. So the burden of the government is being lifted. It also creates new products. So this reduces the need to import, which reduces national expenditure. So those are a few reasons why entrepreneurship is embedded as a national policy. So let's take a look into entrepreneurship for regional growth. At macro level, entrepreneurship is a process of creative destruction, meaning that entrepreneurship has destructive and constructive consequences. For example, you create new product. So this product will disrupt stability of the environment and then will kill the lesser or the weaker competitor product. So it's constructive and destructive at the same time. What is the role of the state, the government, the nation? So the state has dual influence on entrepreneurship. First, they promote entrepreneurship and then they establish restrictive practices. So first, strong promoter of entrepreneurship. So as a strong promoter of entrepreneurship, the state is an entrepreneur. So the state is an entrepreneur itself. This is through state entrepreneurship, or deregulation. So making sure the environment is favorable for the creation of new products, creation of new businesses through policies and reducing administrative work. And also the establishment of restrictive practices. Sometimes the state can play a role by restricting opportunities for future competitors. For the state, it's usually ethnic and foreign entrepreneurs. Some nations, some countries are more proactive. China, for example, they are very active in promoting their innovation and also to increase production through a lot of research. And one of the ways to do that is through science parks. This is important, nation wealth. How important is prosperity of a nation to produce entrepreneurs? According to the GEM or the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, as you can see here, total entrepreneurial activity in Malaysia is 5.9 in 2014. Singapore is 10.6. Singapore is much more entrepreneurial in this time frame. So let's compare. In terms of finance, we are more or less similar. In terms of government policy, in terms of support, Singapore is much more supportive. In terms of taxes and bureaucracy, again, Singapore is much more supportive, Malaysia not so much. Government entrepreneurship program is also quite low for Malaysia, but a bit higher for Singapore. For entrepreneurship education at school, quite low for Malaysia, quite high for Singapore. Okay. Most importantly is, as you can see here, is physical infrastructure. Singapore achieved almost perfect in physical infrastructure, while Malaysia is slowly getting there. So here, nation wealth is important because it creates the money that a nation has can create infrastructure favorable for entrepreneurship. The infrastructure to increase entrepreneurship activities. So this is quite high for Singapore and quite low for Malaysia. So this is where we can learn, but it will also depend on nation wealth as well. The government is also instrumental in instilling values. Value is a readiness for change. So if the government can instill that value, so the society is able to get richer. Politics. It provides a framework for entrepreneurship. And economic institutions, they are institutions like property rights, stock exchanges, banks. This will allow different types of economic enterprises to flourish. So it can increase money circulating in the ecosystem. So it helps creating venture, and also it helps creating new businesses. How to measure entrepreneurial activity? The level of entrepreneurial activity is a function of the degree to which people recognize the opportunities available and that they have the capacity to exploit. At a broader level, there's a relationship between national conditions and the performance of established firms. Let's look into regions and their relations with entrepreneurship. In the Asia-Pacific region, there's a strong role played by the state in the development of entrepreneurship. So this goes back to the national system. A lot of Asian countries are highly regulated by the government. Even Singapore is also regulated by their own government. Asian firms have, in general, pyramid structures. So they are usually family owned. As you can see in Malaysia, we can see pyramid structure of Asian firms. Usually they are family owned. You can see in Berjaya, you can see in Nazar. And there's also presence of Chinese entrepreneurs. So this adds color to the entrepreneurship environment of a host country. At macro level, entrepreneurship is a process of creative disruption. So this is a process of simultaneous emergence and disappearance of technologies, products and firms in the marketplace as a result of innovation. So let's take a look into this data here. Total early entrepreneurial activity according to gender. Female is the darker color, male is the lighter color. I'm very interested in Angola. Male and female entrepreneurship activities are quite similar in terms of value. Same goes for Thailand. Okay, some countries they place more different responsibilities for male and female. So this is just culture, not good, not bad. But let's see Saudi Arabia. As predicted, there are more male participation in entrepreneurship rather than female. And most European countries, there are more male entrepreneurs than female entrepreneurs. This is also interesting to be discussed, the dark side of entrepreneurship. So there's a new movement called entrepreneurship addiction. So this includes obsessive thoughts, withdrawal, neglecting, and the dark side of entrepreneurship is more related to the stress involved in entrepreneurship. High levels of strain, guilt, lying maybe to oversell your product, poor health, and also withholding information. Just because the entrepreneurs do not want to look like a failure. So the dark side of entrepreneurship is actually in relation to downside of entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship can also be destructive. So as people who study entrepreneurship and study entrepreneurs, the question is, how can we reduce the level of the triple Ds? Dark side, downside, and destructive side. Because entrepreneurship is so important to the nation. So we do this by understanding entrepreneurs' suffering and the suffering of others. Okay, and then we try to enhance recovery from the suffering generated by the triple Ds by looking into entrepreneurs' recovery and others' recovery. Others can be the employees, can be the customers, or people involved closely in the entrepreneurship process. So, is there a dark side to something that is so great like entrepreneurship? So, this is related with personality. Entrepreneurs can have personality quirks. It makes them harder to work with. So, they have bias towards action. So, this can make them act rather thoughtlessly. Sometimes they have consequences for the organization. Think about highly innovative entrepreneurs. Sometimes they just do without thinking because they need to be quick. So because of this, they have great difficulty in taking direction. So there's also a quote saying that the entrepreneur who starts his own business generally does so because he is a difficult employee. He cannot work, so that's why he became entrepreneur. So this is highly related to the need for control. So people with need of control will have suspicion of others and have strong distrust for the world around them. And this dark side of entrepreneurship includes unethical opportunities mindset because yes, you need to make profit, and also health issues from entrepreneurship. Okay, so there are also other areas in entrepreneurship. Okay, I would like to provide some highlights. Entrepreneurial characteristics. These are the internal aspects that make entrepreneurs, and the organizational context, the venture itself, how to develop a good business model, what generates income, and so on. The environment, the government, the platforms, the socio-economic conditions, these are aspects that can shape entrepreneurship in a nation. Then the process itself, creating new products, selling new products, and so on. And then to do that, you will need finance. Financing assistance can be obtained from banks, from angels, and so on. But how to convince them to invest in something that has not been proven yet? Okay, there's also performance and outcomes, and also other topics in entrepreneurship, ethics, high growth industries, and so on. So these are the aspects that can be discussed in the following weeks. I hope you can be more engaged, and because we can discuss a lot in this topic of theory. Okay, so we have reached to the end of our lecture. These are the references that I used for this lecture. Feel free to look into them because they are quite interesting as well. We will continue on with lecture 2. I hope to see you all next time. Thank you very much.